is the time of the day when you just feel good that there are so many people still left in the room. And just when you start to think, wow, there's actually so many people sitting here at this hour to listen to you, and then suddenly you remember, how come no one told me that, Gaur Gopal Das is coming after this, so maybe that's why people are all sitting over here. Yeah. But I'll take it. And I think, I think it's funny, isn't it? Before we get into talking about the book, I just thought I'd give you a couple of thoughts on what might have prompted this idea of the book. Really 2 or 3 streams of thought. The first was, I found it funny that we all go to school and college and we learn, about amoeba and Archimedes, and we learn to bisect an angle and dissect a frog. But no one really tells us that, maybe become the kind of kid other people want to play with, right? And we grow up competing. We want that 1 mark more than what Guptaji's son next door gets. We want that 1 mark more which will get us into engineering college. But no one tells us that, stop competing. Maybe you need to collaborate. And learning to collaborate can actually open a lot more doors for you. And I think I was lucky. I got a chance to work with some fabulous people in my career, and I learned a lot of lessons. And I thought it might be interesting to put together some of those lessons. And what I did really in the book is to put together a set of stories. These are simple stories. This is not rocket science, but maybe it is rocket science in the sense that I think if you think about it, these are simple stories which will hopefully stick in your head and will make you do things differently. And that was really the idea behind how come no one told me that. And to give you a quick glimpse of what the book might have had, I thought I'll share a couple of stories, and I want to take you back to the time when I was this young brand manager. I started my career selling soap, and when you come out of business school, you really think that, wow, you want to make a career in marketing, and you want to do all these great advertising campaigns, and what the company does is sends you off to Gorakhpur to go and sell. And then when you get promoted to become a brand manager, you think you've really arrived, and that's really... now imagine this, I was this brand manager and we had the agency presenting to us. So I was looking after a detergent powder, and the agency came and showed us an ad script, okay, for what they thought would make for a great ad. And here I was, as you can imagine, thoda likhta hai, padha padhai, you think you can be creative. So I was trying to tell the agency, yeah, but why don't you change this a little bit? And I think that background maybe should be a shade of green and not the pink that it is. And this went on for a bit. And after a couple of meetings, my boss at that time, a guy called Windy Banga, called me in and he said, how's it going and what's happening and all of that. And, and then he said to me, you know what, I just want to give you one bit of advice. Your job as a brand manager is to make a solid brief. Make sure you tell them about what's the challenge, you tell them about what's the market, what's competition doing, what do you want the advertising to do. He says, that's what you should tell them. Don't get into trying to tell them how to create the ad. You don't try and tell them, what should the script look like or what should that sequence be. That's not really what you should be doing, And I thought, wow, that's good advice. But he said something else to me at that stage, and that stayed with me. And he said, you know what, young man, why keep a dog and bark yourself? Yeah. And I think that line kind of stayed with me. And for the rest of my life, it still comes back to me. And I think of it every time. If you come out of Delhi airport and you want to go to Vasant Vihar, and I'm guessing that the driver could take one of 2 possible routes. And you know what? We all fall into the trap of asking the driver, which route are you taking? Why are you going this way? Why don't you take the other route? Right? We want to be the people taking control of that. Why? Because we think the driver is out to take us for a ride. We think that, he's taking us by this longer route. We know better. Bad idea. Your job is to sit in the car and enjoy the ride while the driver will take care of it. And what also happens is, if you tell the driver which route to take, he's very happy because now if you go through a jam, now if you're stuck, he says, not my problem. You decided that we should take this route. So I think it's a lesson that stayed with me and something that maybe all of us can benefit from. Why keep a dog and bark yourself? So next time you go to a restaurant, Michelin star, great food, great reviews, what do? We go and tell him, mere soup mein thoda aur namak dal dena, I want a little more spicy, a little more tangy. We try and tell the chef how to make that food for us. Bad idea. Yeah. Something else happened since you're talking about chefs and hotels. You know, I was at the Marriott in Mumbai, at the JW Marriott near the airport, and we were doing a workshop. And this workshop was on the 10th floor of the hotel. So, you know, what would happen was we would do the workshop, and then every time for lunch, everybody troops down in the lift, goes down to the restaurant on the ground floor, eats, comes back, gets into the lift, goes back to floor number 10. On the second day, when we were climbing up, someone in the lift said, you know what? What a lovely lift here. This goes so quickly to the 10th floor. You know, I think trust the Marriott guys to get it right. You know, such a lovely hotel. They've made the right kind of elevator. Kitni jaldi pahunch jata hai. It goes to floor number 10 so quickly. And then, you know what? Somebody said, yeah, but when we went into the room after that and we pulled out the windows, we suddenly realized this is not 10th floor. This is floor number 1. It's just that Marriott decided to call it 10th floor. Okay? But because the Marriott called it the 10th floor, we all thought, wow, what a good lift. Wow, Marriott makes sure that, you know, these lifts are so quick, they get you to the 10th floor so quickly. And I think this happens to us in our lives. And maybe it's something we can use for ourselves, which is to say, you know, if you change the perception of how things are, people will attribute values, people will attribute motives that you may have never thought was possible. Yeah, you know? And then, of course, there are lots of people from HR sitting over here, and they've mastered this. So what do you do now? You know, suddenly you have executive vice presidents. Lots of them in the business. Ek zamana tha when if you became executive vice president meant something. Today, it's nice for a young man to be able to go home and tell his prospective mother-in-law, I've become executive vice president. She suddenly thinks, wow, this man is doing well. Yeah, maybe I can trust my daughter with this man. Yeah? Maybe one more story before we get into conversation with Anurag, which is really this. I remember I read something in the newspapers. It was in those, you know, the business press has these little columns which are not necessarily business. And there was this little story where it was like a fashion designer saying 5 style tips to look your best. You know, and I just happened to read it, and it had the usual stuff about, you know, making sure your sleeve is half an inch outside your jacket, color of your ties or your stroll, usual stuff. But what caught my attention was tip number 5. And it said this, it said, get yourself an alteration tailor. Interesting. I wonder, how many of you have an alteration tailor? Yeah? Anybody? Tailor? Yes. Alteration tailor? But as I read through it, it was an interesting point she was making. And she said, most of us have very good clothes in our wardrobes. Okay? We buy good labels, we buy lots of expensive stuff. But these are not necessarily tailored to fit us. And sometimes what you need is this alteration tailor who will look at you and tell you, you know what, if you reduce the length of your trouser by half an inch, it will look much better. You need an alteration tailor who will tell you, due to COVID, no, that half an inch extra on your waist is showing up now. What you need is to make it just a little bit loose, and it'll fit you extremely well. So what an alteration tailor can do for you is to make sure that all those good stuff, all those good garments lying in your wardrobe become even better. They'll tell you what are the small changes you need to make that can make you look even better. And as I read that, I suddenly realized that, you know, it's a good idea for all of us to have an alteration tailor in our lives. Maybe we should have 2 alteration tailors. One for our clothes, one for our lives. You need someone in your life who will look at you and tell you, I think you need to change the way you respond. I think you need to change the way you're listening to people. I think you need to get your anger under control. You need someone who will tell you what are those small changes you need to make that can make you a whole lot better. And if you think about it, we are all who we are today because we had an alteration tailor in our lives. You know, it could have been a sibling, it could have been a boss, it could have been a colleague at work, spouse, whoever. But we had someone who helped us to make those small changes, who pointed out that, hey, maybe here's something which you can do differently, something which you can do better. Yeah? And I think in some ways I feel we should not only have an alteration tailor, we should also be an alteration tailor. And I think I'm in that stage of my life where I feel good about the fact that maybe I can play the role of an alteration tailor and help other people make those small, teeny-weeny changes which can make them just a bit better. And I sometimes feel that a book like How Come No One Told Me That is really not a book, it's an alteration tailor. Maybe it'll tell you that one little thing which can make each of us just a little bit better. Yep, that's really it from me.